Hey folks, Steve here, and I've come to continue my one-man war on fan service. Not really, but someone left a comment on one of my videos a few days ago, and they used that phrase. They said, this sounds like you continuing your war on fan service. And I kind of like that, actually, but I don't think that's what I'm doing. But I saw a tweet the other day, and I screenshot it and retweeted it because it did make me think of certain trends and certain attitudes in storytelling and movies and TV shows, and attitudes that are prevalent among certain factions of fandoms that kind of do my head in. So the tweet that I screenshot and shared was from someone responding to James Gunn making a few announcements and making a few noises to kind of indicate like where he and Peter Safran might be getting ready to take the DC Comics movie universe in the new year as they kind of take over and assert their control and start planning for the next few years of what that's going to look like. And the tweet said, "Hey, James Gunn, I have a doubt. If your rebooted new slate for DCU will start after Aquaman 2, then what's the point of even watching all the 4 upcoming DC movies?" And then they have pictures of the next 4 upcoming DC movies that were announced long before James Gunn and Peter Safran took over. And those movies are the next Shazam movie, Shazam! Fury of the Gods, the Flash movie, the Blue Beetle movie, and then the Aquaman sequel. And the person tweeting it is like, well, if you're just going to reboot it after that anyway, then what's the point of even seeing those movies? And I responded in my typical diplomatic and measured fashion, because they might be good movies, because they might tell stories and feature characters that you find interesting or entertaining or meaningful in some way. What's the point of even watching any movie? Fucking Christ. End quote. I'm a big fan of the Marvel Cinematic Universe. I have at least liked pretty much all of the MCU movies and downright loved a few of them. And overall, as a project, I think it's a very good, very wonderful thing that has produced lots of things that I have, really enjoyed. So I'm not anti-MCU at all, but tweets like that and the attitude that is found in that tweet, it does make me think that, the MCU has kind of broken some people's brains. A lot of people now see a movie, for instance, not so much as something that you go and you watch and you hope to get involved in the story and you hope that you meet interesting characters and they do interesting things. And maybe, if you're lucky, it has something to say that will be meaningful to you or useful to you or get you to think about something or show you something that you hadn't considered before or whatever. They don't think about those terms. They think about it as a collection of facts in a fictional universe. And by watching the movie or reading the book or watching the TV show or playing the game or whatever, they learn the facts about the fictional universe, and then they know them, and then the next movie that follows in the same universe or in the same series, well, that adds to their body of knowledge. And it's basically about accumulating trivia, not about taking part in a story or being swept away, by a drama or by a fiction or something that will engage you and enlighten you and raise you up, elevate you in some way. It's not about that. It's about just, well, what happens next? What happens next? What happens next? So the idea of, well, sure, they're going to release the Shazam movie and the Blue Beetle movie and the Flash movie and the Aquaman movie, but then if they're just going to reboot it after that, well, then what's the point of even seeing them? Like, the idea of the films having some value in and of themselves as stories is not even considered. It's, well, they're going to reboot it anyway, so what's the point? And I find that really distressing. And there were some replies under my tweet that brought up some interesting points, or that at least echoed the point I was making in ways that I thought were good. Like my buddy Dragon Cobalt says, what a grim way of seeing movies. Yeah, I agree. The Last Soviet said, it's like they don't even understand what the point of stories are. They just think it's something that is part of some kind of ongoing quote-unquote canon. You can enjoy things as they are. Not everything has to be a back-referencing Easter egg hunt. Exactly. And then my favorite reply to that tweet from PJ Lusk, who says simply, "No stories. There is only lore." And that's really the problem. That sums up my issue with this succinctly. The choosing, the valuing of lore over story. Because to me, and look, it's all a matter of taste. If you are someone who enjoys the lore and the stories are secondary, that's your choice, that's your preference. I'm not here to tell you that you're wrong, but I am here to tell you that that is not how I see it. And for my own selfish purposes, just based on the kinds of stories and the approach to storytelling that I enjoy and I think is good, I hope that your way of viewing things does not become even more dominant in the culture than it already is. Like, I will say that much. I won't say that you're wrong. I will just say I hope that people who see things your way don't keep getting to make movies and, get to make movies and TV shows and et cetera more than they already do. Like, when stories take place in a shared universe, the shared universe aspect should be like a bonus feature. It shouldn't be the main point. And I think that's one of the reasons why the MCU has done so well, and recent attempts to recreate it have not done very well for the most part. Because if you look at how the MCU started with Iron Man, which was a completely standalone movie. And it planted a seed at the end in the post-credit scene with Nick Fury. Like, it planted a seed of, this could open things up and become a bigger thing. And there were plans to do that. But Iron Man itself was a completely standalone movie. Captain America, again, except for the end where they introduce that character into a broader world. For the most part, the first Captain America movie is a completely self-contained standalone movie. You don't have to have seen any other movie to appreciate Captain America. And Captain America, the Winter Soldier, is the same thing. And it was released much further into the MCU than Captain America, the First Avenger. And for the most part, it is a standalone movie. It has a lot of things happen in it that are relevant to the broader MCU. And there are characters in it that are from other projects and that there are lots of connections. But the story itself exists on its own terms for its own sake, and you can enjoy it and appreciate it and find things about it that are worthy, that have nothing to do with the fact that it is interconnected with all these other projects, right? And I don't think the DCEU with its mainstream projects ever quite figured that out. That's why the side projects in the DCEU were by far the most interesting ones, like Shazam, like James Gunn's The Suicide Squad, like Peacemaker, like the Birds of Prey movie, like those projects that were kind of off the beaten path, that weren't about the Justice League, that were about the side characters, that were in the same universe, but were kind of off over here doing their own thing. They were by far the best stuff. And that's not the only reason, but I think that's part of the reason why those films were so enjoyable. And maybe part of the reason why the people who made those films had the freedom to do their own thing, because they weren't dealing with this studio mandate of, no, don't forget, you have to set up this and this and this, and you have to make sure these pieces are in place for this next movie, and et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So the story that's being told in the movie you're watching right now should be the top priority. And ideally, the people who are hired to make these movies and TV shows and tell these stories not only get that and share that priority, but they are also people who have at least somewhat fresh takes on things and have ideas for stories that will actually add to the canon, as opposed to just looking backwards and going through and revisiting stuff that we've seen before. That's another big problem. That one of the tweets I read a minute ago in reply to mine, where they said not everything has to be back-referenced to everything else. And not everything has to be a revisitation of stuff that we have already seen. I was invited recently to take part in some videos for the Trek Culture YouTube channel, because Trek Culture just surpassed 250,000 YouTube subscribers, which is awesome. I'm so happy for all of them. And I was so thrilled and flattered that they invited me to contribute some stuff to their 250K celebration videos. And the first one of those just went up actually today as I'm recording this, yesterday as you're probably watching this at the earliest. And the topic for the video was, what Star Trek show would you want to see made? And if you look in the comments of that video, it's a lot of people asking for stuff that we've already had. It's like, do season 5 of Enterprise, or do a spinoff about this character from this show, or do a Janeway show, or do a Cisco show. Or it's fans asking for more of the same of whatever their favorite thing was. And here's the thing. It's perfectly normal and expected and fine for fans to do that, to say that. It's perfectly fine for the fans of a franchise to say, well, if you're asking for my opinion of what they should do next, well, they should do, my favorite Star Trek show is Deep Space Nine. They should do more Deep Space Nine. My favorite Star Trek character was Worf. Well, they should do a Worf show, or a Janeway show, or a 7 of 9 show, or whatever. I expect fans to say that. Because they're not, most of them aren't writers, most of them aren't producers, most of them aren't thinking in creative terms. They're fans, and they're like, you ask them, what do you want? Well, I want more of that thing I liked. Okay, fair enough. That's not a problem. The problem is when the people who are put in charge of creating the new stuff think that way too. Because then what you end up eventually with is a creative death spiral where nothing new is being added to the canon. Nothing new is being added to the lore that so many fans claim to love so much. It's just constantly looking backwards and showing us stuff that we've already seen. It's just churning and recycling and not freshening it up with any new material, with any new content. And if that had always been the case, we wouldn't have this wonderful catalog of stuff to obsess over in the first place, with very few exceptions. I strongly believe that the fans should be watching this shit, but they should not be the ones in charge of making this shit. It should be two different groups. The writers, the creators, the people who make the shows should not be the super fans who are out there just clamoring for more of what they already like. Your job as a writer, your job as a creator is not to just ask the audience what it wants and then serve that to them. Your job as a creator, as I see it, and as a lot of people see it, a lot of people who agree with me, weirdly enough, your job as a creator is to come up with things that the audience maybe hasn't seen before, or at the very least that the audience wasn't thinking about or anticipating until you brought it to them. And then once they saw it, they realized that's what they wanted. They couldn't have predicted it because they hadn't seen it yet. They didn't know about it. But you have shown it to them, and you've done such a good job, and you told the story in such a way that it was so interesting and so fascinating to them that they see it, and now they realize, oh, I couldn't have known it before, but that's what I want. Put the story and the new stuff up front as the main event, as the drawing card, as the thing that people are supposed to care about and pay attention to for the most part. That's how you get those reactions. And that's how you grow your story and your canon and your franchise and your shared universe. And you make it a place that people will actually want to keep revisiting for years and years and years and years. It's a better choice, not only commercially, but creatively. You make it a place that lives and breathes and is vibrant and fresh and alive, instead of just a place where people come back to because they pretty much know everything that they're going to see, and they just want to come back and see the same thing that they've already seen. I mean, they can still do that because everything's on DVD and streaming now. Like, they can still come back and look at the old stuff. I do that all the time. But I'm glad that the new stuff is, at its best, about things other than the old stuff. So, anyway, I believe I will now pause for the moment in my war on fan service and return to my tent. I hope you all have a pleasant day. Thank you for bearing with me.